Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Rice. This is my beautiful wife Mayda, and we're super excited to be here. This is our first podcast. How you feeling?
I am pretty nervous.
Very self-conscious.
I am very self-conscious.
That's okay. We'll get through it, right? Deep breaths.
Yes.
Well, we wanted to start a podcast because we have a very interesting story, right? I was widowed a couple years ago. You were widowed the same year. But there's a lot of weird twists and turns with that,
Right.
right? Do you want to give just a very brief background of kind of who you are? Let me go first, and we'll go from there. I was widowed at, 32, 33? My wife passed away in November of 2021, right? We're kind of getting out of COVID. Everybody's like, oh, the world's opening up again. And then my wife died unexpectedly. It was a blood disorder we didn't know about. Took her to the hospital the next day, gone. And I was left with 3 young kids, right? I had a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And suddenly I had to play the role of mom and dad. And that was challenging, to say the least. What about you?
So I was actually really excited to for me to get out into the world, because it was after having Liam, our former 24-weeker, in the hospital for 6 months. And that year when my husband died, that was the year that we were gonna bring out Liam into the world and take him to the park for the first time and smell some fresh air. When he passed away unexpectedly as well on February 18th of 2021, and I was 6 months pregnant at the same time. So it was crazy.
Yep. Well, and with your story, it's really interesting because you guys got married in 2008, right? What happened in 2009?
We actually got married in 2007.
Oh, in 2007.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What happened the year later?
So we actually got pregnant really quick. It was a honeymoon baby, and I gave birth in 2008
Yep, to Andrew.
to Andrew.
Beautiful baby boy.
Oldest, right.
Yep. And then for the next 10 years, you guys went through infertility and struggled with miscarriages.
Right. So for 10 years, we tried to have babies, and I want to say when Andrew turned 4 is when I felt ready to have a baby, just because it came really quick. And I was just so excited. And I lost three babies in 2012 and then 2016. And then I did in vitro.
Yep.
And I was able to get pregnant with Liam and freeze the other baby.
Yep. Well, and when you did in vitro, you got kind of lucky, right? You did only 1 round.
Right.
And normally, how long does it take to get pregnant?
Maybe a couple of cycles.
And it's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
Like it's tens of thousands of dollars for 1 cycle.
Right.
Yeah. So you got lucky, got Liam, but then he came out at 24 weeks. Right. And how long were you guys in the NICU?
We were in the NICU for about 6 months, I want to say, and every day was he may die today or he may live.
And you guys were always in the intensive part of the NICU, like the one where it's like he's not going to make it through the night.
Correct.
Yeah. So every day you were being told your son's going to die. Your son's going to die.
So my miracle baby, after 10 years of giving birth, ended up being born so early that they told us that he was not going to make it.
Which is crazy, but he did. Eventually did, and there's a huge story there. It's a miracle he's alive.
Right.
And then after he got out, talk to me about the next baby, the one you froze.
So I felt like, and it was during COVID, I felt like we needed to go back to get our other baby. It was just a random feeling. One day I had a dream and I felt like I heard a voice, and I told my husband, I'm like, we need to go get our other baby. And at the time we were living in an Airbnb because our house flooded. So he told me it wasn't the right time. He's like, there's no way this is the right time. It's during COVID. We were living in a Airbnb for 2 months because our house had black mold. We couldn't bring Liam in the house to protect him, and And I wanted to get pregnant with my third baby.
Yep. Well, and during that time as well. So Tyler's your husband, or what is your late husband, and what was he doing for work?
So we had a business, an e-commerce business. He traveled for work. He did seminars, and he helped people build their business from scratch.
And so COVID wreaked havoc on his business, right? Like e-commerce was doing well, but as far as like the coaching and things and actually meeting people in person, that stopped completely.
100%.
Yeah. And so I as I remember, the big thing that was a problem for him was he said, it's not the right time because we're not making any money.
Right.
Right? Like, how am I going to have another kid and support him?
Right. So we were basically surviving off of all of our products on Amazon and drop shipping for other people. But it was definitely not the right time because he was not traveling, and he was always gone 3 weeks out of the month.
Right. Yep. And so, you guys decided for some reason it was the right time. Like you definitely, you had signs and you're like, oh, you know what? I heard a voice. It's time. What happened with him?
He said no. He's like, absolutely not. This is not the right time. We're not going to do it. I said, okay. I said, well, I feel like it's right, but if you don't feel it, then let's not do it and wait till next year. And I remember I went and took a nap with Liam, my NICU baby. And the next thing I know is that somebody came to the door and brought me flowers and chocolates. And there was a note that said, I saw a sign. You have an appointment with the doctor tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Yep. So he saw a sign. Did he ever tell you what that was?
He never told me what that was. I don't know. He never did. He said it was something sacred, and he told me he was going to share it with me, but he never really got to.
Okay. So you guys both felt, hey, it's the right time to have a baby. And then with Ty, you got pregnant pretty quick as well.
Oh, yeah. He was frozen. We had to unthaw him, and usually babies die in that process. Ty was actually, the reason why we froze Ty was because they told us that he was not graded as good as Liam was. And so they're like, he might not stick. He might not stay strong in your belly. You might miscarry him. But we can try it. And so that was one of the reasons I was like really scared, but I felt really strongly that I needed to do it. And they put him inside of me. For those who have done in vitro, I took progesterone. That's what I needed for this baby only. And they put it inside of me. And the doctor, the one that put him in, the embryologist, said, wow, this baby just went in and attached right away.
Yep.
It's like he could smell you.
Yeah. They were very surprised. Babies don't usually just attach and I'm there.
Right. No, and they told me that once he was unthawed, that his grade went actually up. So he was they usually give grades to babies when you're doing in vitro, and he was a C+ or something like that, maybe a B. He went to an A or A+.
Nice. Yep.
Yeah.
So you got pregnant with Ty, very excited. Tyler started working again. He started traveling again.
Right.
And then February.
Yeah. So he goes on this trip, and I'm 6 months pregnant. He calls me on the day that he was supposed to come back home. I was actually 24 weeks pregnant, which is was when I gave birth to Liam.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, you better be home by week 24 because I'm scared that I'm going to go through the same thing. And he called me that day that he was coming home. And he's like, you know what? A client told me that he was diagnosed with COVID and maybe I need to stay somewhere else and not come home.
Need a quarantine.
Yeah, he needed a quarantine. And so he drove to Utah. He was actually in Vegas at that time. He drove to Utah and he went to a hotel and quarantined for 2 weeks just so we could protect Liam and protect myself because I was pregnant.
Yep. Well, and before he left on the trip, you had a really bad feeling about him going on the trip in the first place.
I told him not to go. I told him, you know what, I don't feel like it's right. I am scared. We don't know what could happen. and he said, we need money.
Yep. Yep.
So
So he went and had to quarantine, came back,
yeah,
but then he made it. Like he made it through quarantine.
he came back. Yeah, he came back triumphant,
Mm-hmm.
and he, we were very excited that he was fine. I don't know if he had symptoms when he came back. He looked kind of sick. Like I don't know. His face had just kind of changed. He didn't look the same, but he told me he was doing fine. He was everything was great, and 3 days later, he was sick and took him to the hospital, and he died 2 days later. So.
Yep. And you guys bounced around hospitals, and
We went through,
and it
3
wasn't.
hospitals.
Yeah, I know. With my wife, I took her to the hospital. I took her to the hospital Wednesday night, and Thursday morning I got a call super early, and they're like, "You should get down here," right? And I was like, "Uh oh," and that was it, right? So my experience was it was quick, right? Yours was extremely dragged out,
Right.
right?
Right. So I took him to the hospital and to the first one, and I go back home. So I basically just dropped him off at the emergency room because he told me he wasn't breathing or he couldn't breathe, and he told me his lungs hurt. I don't know, or his back, his chest, something like that. And I went back home and brought Liam back because I was like, "There's no way Liam is gonna go inside a hospital." Um, my in-laws came to babysit my kids, and then as I was driving back to the hospital, he calls me and he's like, "They're gonna transfer me to another hospital because I have blood clots in my lungs. They said that it's not a big deal, that I'm gonna be okay. This is something that can be treated, but I'll meet you at the other hospital." So I drove to the other hospital instead.
Yep. Well, it was quite the process, and then even at the very end, when they unplugged him, because they said, "Hey, the equipment we have just isn't big enough for your husband." I mean, your husband was 6'7".
He was 6'7".
Yeah, and he was a big guy.
Yeah.
And they couldn't keep him alive.
No, it was actually really crazy. And, you know, I I have a lot of faith. I'm a very religious person, and I never once thought that my husband was going to die. Like, there was no way. And he looked fine. We were talking. They were just like, "We're going to help you with the blood clots. It's not a big deal." But it turned out that they didn't have enough staff in the hospital, and so we arrived at the hospital at 8 a.m. and by 10 p.m. he was getting worse. And then the doctors came by 11. They're like, "We need to operate on you because now you have blood clots in your heart and your heart is failing." And so I had to sign this paper saying that, like any other surgery, there are risks to those surgeries. But he went and he said bye to me. "I'll see you later." I said, "I'll see you later." And next thing I know, at 2 a.m., after 2 hours being in surgery, they're like, they were doing a bypass in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me that he had like 3 heart attacks and that he was basically in life support and that they didn't know if he was going to make it through the night.
Yep. Well, and eventually his whole family came, his parents, siblings. They actually brought Andrew in the room.
Right.
And you came in the room, you're very, very pregnant, and they unplugged him.
Right. They told me, "Go see your husband." And I'm like, "Okay." They never told me that it was going to be a goodbye.
Mm.
It was more like, "Oh, I get to see him," because he was in very critical condition, obviously. So they would not let me see him and stay there for long periods of time. Maybe it was like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But this time, suddenly they called me and they're like, "Oh, so yeah, you can see your husband and say goodbye to him because we're going to unplug him." And I told him not to. His whole family came in and they were okay with unplugging him. I wasn't. They brought Andrew in, which I did not give permission to bring my son, who was 12 at that time. And it was just very traumatic for us because we were fighting with the doctors not to unplug him, and they did anyway. And so we looked at the monitor and we saw his heart and all of his vitals going down.
Yep. And then after they finally unplugged him, you fainted.
I fainted.
Yep. And who caught you?
My brother.
Your brother. Yeah. Your brother flew. Where was he at?
He was in Texas.
He was in Texas.
He
flew out here.
Yeah, he flew to see Tyler, and be there with me at that moment that he was coming in the room. That's the moment that Tyler flatlined, and I fainted, and he caught me.
Yeah. So, and now, yeah, there's a whole bunch of trauma. I mean, there's the sound, the sights. It's just, and after that, there's nightmares, right? Like you've been having nightmares for a while, you and Andrew.
Right. Just of everything the doctors told me, him just being unplugged, seeing him with a lot of blood outside of his body because they were doing dialysis as well, and the body was not returning back to his body, like as it should. And yeah, it was crazy. It was really bad. And Andrew, my 12-year-old at that time, he could not believe that was happening. And so he's like, he's just playing. There's no way that he's dying. And so he opened up his eyes, and his eyes were yellow because all of the organs had shut down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we didn't really get to say goodbye, just us or just me.
Right.
There was maybe 20 people in the room.
Yeah, you were an afterthought.
Right.
Yeah, they're like, we're going to say goodbye. Oh, and you should probably grab his wife.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it was quite the experience. But then, I mean, so Tyler was the breadwinner, right? He had the businesses, he made the money. So when he passed, you and your dad, I mean, your dad's in finance, right? And you guys are like, oh, well, let's keep going. Let's do this business. Let's keep going. But you didn't know, we found this out later, while you were in the hospital with Tyler, your business was being stolen and all of your bank accounts were drained, all of them, right? So when you came home basically to a ransacked house because people went through your house and tried to take everything they could, titles to things, and then somebody stole the business as well.
Right.
So what did you do with that? I mean, I know you hired a lawyer.
I did. I tried to save the business as much as I could. I was fighting back, all at the same time going through grief and denial and the funeral arrangements and all of that.
I don't know how you did that.
I don't know either. It was really hard. And on top of that, it was Liam's second birthday coming up, and I was going through meetings with the lawyer and just writing letters back and forth when I was really excited to celebrate Liam's birthday. Kind of excited, right? Let's say. Celebrating his birthday, I actually fell. I was going down the stairs and I fell, and I broke my leg.
Well, and when you fell, it was a weird fall. It wasn't. It was just weird in the sense that you were coming down the stairs, like the railing gave out.
Yeah.
And you felt yourself falling, and you're like, I can't stop this, and so you protected your baby.
Right.
And you just let it happen.
Right. So I was actually bringing Liam. I was holding Liam by the hand, and I was going down, and so I felt like my ankle twisted weird. So I put Liam on one side, and I grabbed my belly, and I just went sideways.
Yep.
To protect the baby. And so I broke my ankle in 3 different areas.
And so, and how many pins and things did you have and stitches? And
they had to do surgery. So they told me you need to give birth. I gave birth with my broken leg, so they could perform surgery. And I have 11 pins, needles in there.
Yep. Well, and then because of that break in your ankle, remind me, they had to do surgery. They had to stitch you up, right? Because then when you gave birth, there was an issue with that.
Right. So I 2 months before my husband passed away, we did a cervical cerclage. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's basically they stitch up the cervix so the cervix doesn't open up like it did with Liam.
Right.
And to be able to give birth, they need to get the stitches out, and apparently they didn't get them all out. And so I give birth with my broken leg, natural birth, and the doctor ends up seeing a couple of stitches in there, and he's like, I'm not sure how your baby survived or how you survived because you still have stitches in here, and with the stitches in there you could have very well ripped yourself inside and hurt your baby. So both of you could have died. Yep.
So it was, it was just one thing after another.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I did not have a break that year. 2021 was hell for me.
Yep. Well, even to the point where after Ty was born, Ty was healthy. right? It's a miracle. Ty was healthy. Your parents came into town. They stayed with you. They were helping you out with the baby, but you were bedridden, right?
Yeah.
You had your leg healing. You had a newborn. You had Liam, and you were in bed, and that's all you could do.
Right. So they did surgery a day after I gave birth,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so hard on my body because I was already bleeding from giving birth. So they did surgery on me. I come back home. I can't walk. I'm taking all these pills for pain and whatnot. And so they had me. I was breastfeeding as well, and they had me pump and throw the milk away, so I didn't give it to the baby, but also I kept producing milk.
Right.
And so I did that for a while, and I want to say I was taking maybe about 12 pills or so because the pain was so bad. On top of that, well, with the pills, I'm counting 12 because I was taking anxiety pills and depression pills and pain medications, throughout the day. It's just so hard. I felt like I was such a burden for everybody. I just don't know. There was a moment where I just wanted to kill myself, honestly.
Yep. And I remember we talked about that. You were laying in bed and you had all these pills next to you, right? Because you were on tons of pain meds and stuff, and you put them in your hand and you were going to take them, right? You were just going to overdose and be like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm in so much pain. I'm a burden to everybody. Like, what is the purpose of this? And Ty cried, and that's what kind of snapped you out of it. And you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Right. I had exactly 33 pills in my hand. 33 pills because that was how old I was. And I said 1 pill per year. I was saying, okay, I felt like my life was hard when I was a child because I was bullied at school, like really bad. And then I go through infertility, and I go through, finally having my babies, and then my husband dying. Like, nothing made sense. I actually questioned what I believed in at that moment. I did not question myself at all when I was going through infertility for 10 years or anything like that. I've always had faith. But at the moment where I was able to have my babies finally, that's the moment where my husband dies. It just didn't make sense to me. So I said I felt worthless. I felt like a burden. I couldn't walk. People had to take me to the bathroom, which it was my mom or my son. I couldn't shower by myself. We had to, it was just it was a hard job for me to shower because I couldn't get my leg wet or my cast.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was too much. It was too much. And so, yeah, I was gonna I was gonna take the pills and die, and and my baby cried, and I snapped out of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing? This is not me. That's when I woke up.
Yep. And really, for people like that in that situation, that's why I think for me we're creating this podcast, right? Because you go through some trials in your life. I mean, you went through like an Abrahamic trial, right? Like sacrifice your son Isaac, and oh my gosh, right? And you hit this point, you hit the wall, and you're just like, I don't even know what to believe anymore. Like I don't know if I can keep going. And when you're in that moment, you feel like you're in total darkness, right? And there's just no hope. There's no reason to move on. And I know I was super depressed. I would come home and just stare at the wall. Like my brain just wouldn't process what in the world happened, right? I'm like, the reality I'm in doesn't make sense, where Asia, my late wife, she's not here. She's not on a trip. She's not gone. She's gone, And so we want to create an environment or a community for people that feel like they have nowhere else to go and nobody else understands, right? We can't know their pain, but we definitely have a taste of what that feels like. And to speak to, we feel like a burden. You do, 100%. You feel like a burden, right? You feel like, oh man, everybody wants to help. And worst thing you can do to somebody that's grieving is say, hey, how can I help?
Right.
Right? That's the worst, because it gives you homework. It's like, I don't know. In that moment, I don't know what I need. Don't ask me, hey, how can I help? What do you need? I have no idea. Like I'm still, I don't even know how I'm alive right now. I don't know what I need. Like when Asia died, I didn't eat for days because I didn't realize I was hungry, right? Things just didn't make sense. But I have 3 kids that were hungry. And so one of the best things that one of my friends did was he set up these meals. He just set it up, sent me a link and said, hey, here's DoorDash. Here's so many meals. Just order it whenever you want. And I said, oh, perfect. And I gave it to my mom or somebody. And I was like, hey, if the kids are hungry, just feed them this way. And it was a really big help. But if my friend would have said, hey, what do you need? I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know what I need. I need my wife back is what I need. But you're not going to do that.
Right. People always ask me, like, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't even make decisions for myself.
Right.
I had no idea what I wanted in that moment. I knew that I wanted to die, and I knew that I wanted to go where my husband was. Mm-hmm. And that's all I knew. So yeah, if you're going through this, don't feel bad if you don't know what you want. And if you're the person on the other side asking, what do you need? Don't feel bad either. Don't take it personal when they don't call you. Because really, when you're in that moment, you don't know what you need. And do it. Just do it for that person. Just show up. If you want to bring them a meal, bring them a meal. That's what helped me. And I had a person do this whole schedule and said, Monday is going to be this person, Tuesday is going to be this person, Wednesday is going to be. So that's what helped me. People were telling me how they were going to help me instead of me telling them.
Right. Yeah. Because in those moments, you've got so much on your plate. You don't know what you need.
No, you don't know.
You need somebody to take the lead, take you by the hand and say, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Which, I mean, it blows my mind that you were going through all of this. You were fighting over your business. You broke your leg and you're just like, I don't know how you went through most of that. Because who was the guiding person for you saying, this is what we're going to do?
So I had a really close friend. She lived by my house, and she actually had a little agenda where she would write everything down that I needed to do. And she would give me the list, and she'd be like, okay, these are the next steps of what you need to do. You need to worry about your kids. You need to eat. Because just like you, when Tyler died, I didn't want to eat, but I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And so they would bring me smoothies, actually, because I didn't want anything solid. And so they would bring me smoothies, and they're like, what is your favorite fruit? And so I'm like, oh, I like strawberries and bananas. And so that they would bring me stuff like that I liked, and that they knew that I liked, and in a form of a smoothie, because they knew that I was not going to eat solid food. But my kids, my other 2, needed food. But yeah, it was a really close friend that basically, I did not call her or anything like that. She actually took the first step to do it for me, because I had no idea what to do. I don't know if you struggle with this, and I still struggle with this. It was memory. Like, my memory was gone. And so she was always there to remind me, did you eat? Did your kids eat? Did you pay your bills, like your most basic bills, like utility bills, the house? My husband was in charge of everything. I didn't even know how to change a tire. I was dependent on him so much.
Remember, you called me.
That's another story. But I didn't know how to do anything. Like, seriously, like my late husband, he was my first everything. He was my first boyfriend. I waited for him to come back from his mission of 2 years. And so he was my first boyfriend, the first person I dated. And then we got married. And we were married for almost 15 years. And I didn't know how to live in the U.S. without my husband, if that makes sense.
Well, and because you're originally from Costa Rica.
Right. I'm from Costa Rica. Yeah. So I came here to go to school. Mm-hmm. And that's where my life started. And so really my life without Tyler in the U.S. was, I didn't know what to do. So it was extremely hard. I just didn't know what to do. So I thought I couldn't live without him, honestly. I thought, God messed up. If he is going to take the husband or the wife, I think he should take the whole family complete. That's really what I was complaining about for many months, because I was like, this doesn't work. Like, it's just it shouldn't be like this.
Right.
I was so in denial. And to the point where I thought for maybe about a year that my husband was going to come back somehow. So I would go to the cemetery 3 times a day just to see if his grave site like was open somehow, or like he would like come back from the dirt, open everything that there is, right? The casket, and then they put like a what, like a thing to protect the casket so it doesn't get any humidity or whatever. I'm like, he's gonna come back, and so I would go in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night, and sometimes I'd be there till midnight because I was so in denial. I was like, there's no way he's just gonna come back anytime soon. There's no way that God allowed me to have my babies after 10 years of infertility for my husband to be gone, and now I don't even know what I'm gonna do.
Right. And yeah, you just feel totally lost. And I mean, I know you said this before. You felt like your life ended the day he died, right? You died when he died.
Right.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's so hard to get through that, right? But eventually, I mean, you did get back in the dating game, right?
I did.
Right. Tyler died February 2021. Asia, for me, died November 2021. And then in March, we met, right?
Yeah.
Just briefly, what made you decide to get back into dating? For me, what it was I knew I couldn't play mom and dad, and I have 2 girls and a little boy, and I'm like, and this is just me being being stupid, me being naive. I was like, maybe I can raise my boy, right? He's a boy, I'm a boy, we can do this, right? But my little girls, I'm like, how am I supposed to raise these girls? Like, eventually they're going to grow up, they're going to go through their periods, they're going to, like, they need a mom. They can't just have dad and be like, hey, dad, I'm bleeding. I'm like, I don't know. Or even just weird things like wiping baby girls, right? Like girls need a wipe. Boys don't wipe like that, right? We go pee and that's it, right? Like, there's not a weird, you got to wipe from your vagina to your butt so you don't get an infection, right? Things like that I had to learn, and I'm like, oh yeah,
Right.
yeah. There's things with girls.
Right. For me, seriously, like, one was that a lot of people around me, they're like, even the person that may dig the hole in the cemetery, he's like, are you sure you want your name to be on the headstone? Because you're going to get remarried. And I was like, what? Like,
Yeah, that pisses me off. When people are like, oh, when you start dating again, I'm like, shut up. Don't ever say that again. Right?
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like for people, it's like they already knew. Like, my husband died, and then the next month, people were like, you're going to get remarried.
A terrible thing to say.
You're going to meet somebody, and there's no way you're just going to stay single.
It's true. It's just insensitive.
It's very insensitive at that time. I was like, how dare you tell me this?
Yeah.
But then as I was doing therapy, my therapist told me, you cannot stay stuck. You cannot believe that your husband's going to come back, because it's not going to come back. You need to do something for yourself. What do you want? You need to go out and meet people. And so that was my first step, is that I stepped out of my comfort zone. I didn't know how to date.
No.
I only dated my husband when I was 18, 19, and 20. Like, he was my first boyfriend. I didn't know how to date. I didn't want to date. I felt like it was so scary to just go out there, and there were so many apps. And for me, that was just a big no-no. Like, I would, like, download him on my phone, and then I would delete him. And then download him again and delete him. But yeah, like, for me, it was, I can't stay alone, one, because I hate being alone. I love going to the movie theater, and I didn't have anybody else to go with, right? I don't like sleeping alone at night, and I had to turn the light on or leave the TV on all night long so I didn't feel alone. It's just weird things like that, and I don't think it's very weird, but I just felt lonely. And then number 2, I had a newborn, and I'm like, this baby doesn't know through everything we went through. And I had Liam, my former 24-weeker, that was only 2, and he had no idea what had happened either. And I said, it would be selfish of me for them not to grow up with a dad. Like, I could have done it, and I applaud all those women that have raised their kids single, like I think we're strong enough to do it. But in my case, I wanted them to grow up with a dad. And my older son, I felt like he needed masculine figure in his life,
Right.
a male figure that would do stuff with him.
Right.
And so that's what really drove me to meet others and be like, okay, we need to be a complete family. I just wanted to have a complete family. That's what I always dreamed of, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a complete family.
Yep. Perfect. So, and what happened with us was really unique, I think. I think 100% our spouses brought us together, and we were supposed to meet. Because while you were grieving, like the way I know the way you would process things is you would go on a drive, right? Put the kids in the car, go on a drive, because it's not like you can go on a walk, right? Your leg's still recovering. You're like, I need to get out of the house. Right?
Yeah.
So you would go on a drive, you grab food, and you would go sit in the parking lot of my work, actually, which is interesting. And so I was doing sales at the time, right? Brand new to sales, and I killed that. I did really well. But I would take sales calls and go outside and walk around, and you would be out in the parking lot. We never saw each other. But I just thought that was interesting. Or I think one of the first times we were messaging on that app, you were just down the street from my house.
I was.
Yep.
I was trying to, so I was left with this huge car, and all of a sudden we were only, my 3 kids and me.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was 6'7", so we didn't really need that big of a car anymore. So, and it was pretty expensive, and I wanted to trade it in for something smaller. And I was parked at a dealership that apparently was in front of your neighborhood.
Right. Yep. It was like 2 minutes away from my house.
Right. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
And you told me, oh, I live by there. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yep.
But at that time, we were just chatting, getting to know each other, nothing big, right?
Right. Well, and two, what's interesting is you live down in Springville, right, which is, 45 minutes south of Salt Lake or so. I was living in Holiday, so like 10 minutes south. I think a year before, before our spouses passed away, I was working as an engineer, got the impression that this isn't what you want to do. Like, I was looking at my life and I'm like, this is not where I want to be. So I quit and I went and did sales, and my sales job was down in Orem, which is kind of close to Springville. And we were planning on moving down actually to Springville. Asia and I were looking at houses, building a house in Springville the summer of 2022, right? We were talking to builders and stuff, and she passed in November 21, so that didn't happen. But it was just interesting that we were going to be down there in that area anyway. And then, Tyler passed, and you're going through everything, and then Asia passed, and we were in the same general physical area, right? Because, and this is just me, because I'm super logical, and you're more emotional, right? You're like, if it feels right, I'm going to do it. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Right, right. I just, you know what? I just wanted to have somebody as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I wanted. I was looking for a friend and somebody that would understand me. And I really thought that I was gonna, the only way, really, even when I was going through those apps, I was like, there's no way that anybody is gonna like me. Because one, I've given birth to 3 kids, so my body is not the same. And 2, I've gone through a lot. Like, I don't think people want drama in their life. And I feel like my life has just been one thing after another.
Right.
And,
and let me stop you real quick. Some of the guys you did date at first, that's what they told you.
right.
They're like, you're too much drama for me. They're like, you're too much.
Yeah, so I'd be stupid enough to tell them, just because I needed to talk to somebody, and I'm a very open person, and it all comes out. And I think I would scare them away, because I'm like, so this is what happened. And they're like, whoa, like, they're looking for something else. And especially if they haven't never been married,
Right.
they're like, I don't think we're a match, which for me was okay, just because it never felt right. There was one guy that I had known for many, 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 many years. And I told him, so you've been on the dating life for 15 years, the whole time that I've been married. I'm like, will you save me from the dating life? And thinking about it now, that was so embarrassing. I can't believe I said that. Because I'm like, can we just save each other from this? I have a lot of love to give, right? Which I do. Like, grief is love,
Right.
and I didn't know where to put it. I just needed to love somebody. I needed somebody to be my friend and just to be there for me. And I didn't want to be alone in life. But I did tell him that. And then the other guys, he went like, no, I'm not interested, basically. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm sorry, that was like such an awkward conversation. Still, I was just still in denial, I think. And the other guys, they were like, I'm going to make you forget your husband. And that's not what I wanted.
What
like,
a terrible thing to say.
why would I want to forget my husband?
Yeah, they don't get it.
No, they don't get it. And they were guys that had gone through divorce or things like that. And I didn't go through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started thinking, if I do get married, it's probably going to be a really old guy. Like, because old guys are the ones that are widowers.
Right.
They're not young.
Yeah.
And so
definitely not like me. People like me don't get widowed.
Okay, whatever. No, I just, that's what I had in my mind. I'm like,
Right.
well, I think I'm not interested in getting married anymore. I couldn't find the right person, and everybody I was talking to, they were like either scared or they were like, let's forget your husband, and they would get jealous that I would go to the cemetery all the time, and they're like, why? They just didn't get it. They didn't get the whole thing. And so I had given up on that idea. Actually, I deleted all the apps. I went back to school because when my husband died, I was doing my master's, and so I went back to school, and I said, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna graduate. I only had a little bit left, and I'm gonna be teaching at a university. I was gonna go for my PhD, and that was just my career goals.
Yep.
And that was it until all of a sudden you show up.
I showed up.
Yeah, I don't know from where, but you did.
Wow. Well, and with me, when Asia died, it was a weird feeling because I didn't want to date, I didn't want to get remarried or anything, but you're lonely, right? And you've got friends and things, and that's fine. But yeah, at night, it's just nice to have somebody else there, right? And like your kid slept in your bed, right? My kid slept in my bed. That's not the same. I'm like, I need somebody that can be there. Like I need my wife. I want somebody to love and love me back, right? And I was super lonely. I know the kids needed somebody, and I said, the longer I wait, the more they're going to suffer. And so that's how eventually I got on a million dating apps, and I found you. And it's an interesting story how you and I actually found each other.
Yeah, it's
And we'll dive into that eventually.
right.
But yeah, it like this whole thing of you and I finding each other, dating, and we got married, and now we've got a blended family, 6 kids, and it's a struggle sometimes. You know what I mean? Like it's incredible. I'm really like we love our life together, but it's definitely unique. Like the challenges are very unique.
100%. It's totally different, and I think it's worth mentioning that if you're in that position that you and I were 3 years ago, take your time. Take your time to heal.
Right.
Don't rush it. Don't marry somebody for the wrong reasons.
Don't let anybody tell you how to grieve.
Exactly.
Yeah, grieve in your own way. If it takes you a while, take a while. If it's fast, be fast. Nobody can tell you how to grieve.
Right. And just like my dad asked you the first time he met you, he's like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a mom or are you looking for a wife? And that's something that I had to go through and ask myself as well. Like, am I looking for a dad or am I looking for a husband? And obviously I wanted both, but I wanted my companion. I
Right.
didn't want to grow old by myself, right? And
Right.
so it's good to take your time. I think, and we'll dive into this later as we go on, but a lot of people were not very happy that we got married.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people did not understand.
No,
Yeah.
they did not.
They're like, you're not done grieving. And you're like, excuse me? Yep.
Yeah. They tell you when and where and who. Don't let people tell you that.
Right.
That's just not right.
Yeah. Well, then just the last thing I want to end on, the last note. It used to bother both of us actually on these widow groups on Facebook and things where people would get widowed, get remarried, and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never been happier. And you're like, oh, and it's hard not to take that the wrong way, right? When you say, I've never been happier, I didn't know love could be this sweet. You're like, oh, you're forgetting about your old spouse, or you're forgetting about them, or how dare you say that? And
or maybe you never loved them. And
right. Like all these negative thoughts kind of swirl around your head, but it's true though, right? You go through such enormous pain and suffering, and it increases your capacity to love, right? Like I feel like I can love deeper than I could before, right? And I know you and I have talked about this. The way I love you is very different than how I loved Asia, right? I feel like you and I are connected just at a different level because of what we've gone through, as opposed to, being 18, 19, 20, super naive and young, getting married and being like, let's make this work.
Right. And you were married to her for 10 years.
About 10 years.
Right. I got married so young. I was 21, just barely 21, and I think we got married just because. I mean, we loved each other, but we were like, let's get married.
Right, that's what we do.
That in our religion especially, that's just what happens. Like, we like each other, we love each other, we want to be together, and we're just going to grow old together, so let's do this, right? We, young and dumb and broke and whatnot, like the song says.
Yep.
But I feel like with you and me, I'm more mature. I know exactly what I want. And I love my husband, my late husband. It's amazing. I like to talk about him in the present tense because I believe that he still lives, just not here.
Right.
But he's amazing, and I love him very much. But I feel with how much I've grown, I feel like you and I are more compatible.
Yeah.
Than what I was at 21. Like, I didn't know what I wanted at that time. And it's not like I regret marrying him or anything like that. But marriage was so much more difficult, like especially the first 3 years. And I feel like I'm not saying our marriage is perfect, because it's not perfect. But you and I understand each other at a deeper level, for sure.
Yeah. And so what we want to do with this podcast is we're going to kind of dive into little sections of this and talk about things that I think people want to hear and want to know about, right? Like all the infertility. It's that word I'm chewing on. The infertility you went through. I mean, going through infertility and going through in vitro and stuff, it's taxing on your body, and just emotionally, and then going through miscarriages, and it's definitely a lot. And we want to go through and just kind of dissect each piece of this and kind of explain it and do a deeper dive, and hopefully, that story, what we talk about resonates with people. And, we'd love to just kind of explain how we've done it.
Right.
And hopefully that helps.
And that's where the name really comes from. I believe that I died the day my late husband died. I'm a different person. I am not the same. And I feel like all 8 of us, we're rising up.
Right. Yeah.
So that's where the 8 rise up comes from, right?
Right. Yeah, only a little play on words, but yeah, 100%. We're all rising up together, right? And I mean, we're trying to bring everybody up with us, and we would love it if you continue to listen to the podcast, to subscribe, and honestly, if you got questions or anything, reach out. Like, we'd love to talk about different facets of our life and hopefully answer questions, right? Because a lot of people in these situations, they're scared and they don't want to talk about it.
Right. This is a topic that not many people are willing to share, or that they just stay quiet, kind of like I wanted to, right? Like, for a long time, I just didn't want to talk about how I'm a widow and everything I've gone through. I feel like I was reborn, and so I'm like, no, I'm not going to talk about my past, and my past is what made me today.
Right.
So don't be scared to talk about it and share your story, because it's actually what makes you today, what made me today. And I feel a lot stronger. I feel like I'm a better person because of what I went through, and I wouldn't change any of it. As much pain I went through, I think I wouldn't change any of it. I'm very grateful for all the trials that I went through, even the fertility. even the trauma that I went through with my husband when he was dying. I think I wouldn't be here today if I wouldn't have gone through that.
Right. So we just want to share with people, and hopefully we connect. I mean, don't hide what you've been through, right? Definitely share it, and then we all grow and learn together.
Be authentic. Be
Yep.
you.
Be you. So, but hey, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next time. We want to pump out one of these at least once a week.
Yes, that's the plan. So
Okay.
hopefully.
Yep. So we will see you next week on 8 Rice Up.
See ya.